All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the 21st chapter of the Quran, Surah Al Anbiya. Now, the name translates to the prophets, and that's a huge clue. We're going to unpack its core message. You know, what it says about accountability, about divine mercy, and this one single idea that ties all the prophets' missions together.
So, right from the get go, this chapter hits you with this incredibly powerful and urgent message. I mean, there's no gentle introduction here. It just drops this bombshell right in the first verse. It's like a giant cosmic alarm clock going off, telling us that judgment is near, but humanity, well, we're hitting this snooze button, just totally distracted. And that right there sets the tone for everything else to come.
And that really is the central problem the surah lays out. It's this massive tension, right? On one side, you've got this divine warning, this ultimate accountability that's getting closer and closer. And on the other side, well, there's us, just living our lives, caught up in the day-to-day, maybe completely unaware, or, let's be honest, maybe choosing to ignore that bigger picture. This is the conflict at the very heart of the chapter.
So, to really understand how the chapter tackles this whole issue, we're going to break it down into 5 key parts. We'll start with that approaching reckoning, then look at the idea of one message from many messengers. After that, we'll get into some amazing stories of faith and fortitude, see the signs in the universe, and finally wrap it all up with what it calls a mercy to the worlds. Okay, so let's jump into that first theme, the approaching reckoning. And what's interesting is the surah doesn't just, drop the warning and move on. It actually dives into how people react to a message like this. Yeah, it describes people hearing this divine reminder and immediately trying to explain it away. They call it confused dreams or say, oh, he's just a poet making stuff up. It's like they're scrambling for any excuse not to take it seriously. And the surah makes a really important point here. This is nothing new. This has happened before, it's a pattern, and it warns that the communities who did this in the past, well, they had to face the consequences.
All right, so if being distracted and heedless is the big problem, then what's the solution? Well, the surah gives us an answer. It points to this single, consistent, unified message that's been delivered over and over again throughout all of human history by this incredible chain of messengers.
And the absolute core of that message is a concept called tawheed. This is the foundation, the bedrock principle of pure monotheism. It's the belief in one and only one indivisible God, one creator, one ultimate authority, and because of that, all worship belongs to him alone. This isn't just an idea, it is the central, most important idea of all.
In this verse right here, it's basically the mission statement for every single prophet that ever lived. The surah is making a powerful argument. It doesn't matter if you're talking about Noah, Abraham, Moses, Jesus, or Muhammad. Their fundamental call, the core of their message, was exactly the same. There's no deity except me, so worship me. And to show us exactly what this looks like in action, the surah gives us the story of Abraham. And it's brilliant. He doesn't just stand up and preach. No, he sets up this masterful, logical trap to show his people how powerless their idols really are. I mean, he smashes the small ones, leaves the big one, and then says, hey, why don't you ask him what happened? He literally forces them into a corner where they have to admit that this thing they worship can't even speak, let alone do anything. So what happens when their logic is completely shattered? Well, they fall back on what people always do, brute force. They decide to burn him. But this is where the story takes an incredible turn. Abraham's absolute faith in the one true God is answered with divine intervention. The fire, which should have destroyed him, is literally commanded. O fire, be coolness and safety upon Abraham. It's such a powerful demonstration of where the real power actually comes from. But Abraham's story is just the beginning. What the surah does next is amazing. It gives us this series of quick, powerful snapshots of other prophets, each one caught in a moment of absolute crisis, and each one showing us what real faith and fortitude look like. I mean, think about Jonah. Can you imagine a more desperate situation? He's been swallowed by a huge fish, trapped in total darkness, deep under the ocean. It's the ultimate moment of isolation and hopelessness. And what does he do? He doesn't scream, "Get me out of here!" No. His prayer is this beautiful declaration of tawheed, and then this incredibly raw, honest confession. Indeed, I have been of the wrongdoers. Then you have Job. Here's a man who has lost literally everything: his health, his family, all his wealth. Just unimaginable suffering. And yet, his prayer,
Wow. It's just a masterclass in dignity. He doesn't complain. He just states the reality of his situation. Adversity has touched me. And then immediately follows it by affirming his faith in God's essential nature. And you are the most merciful of the merciful. It's just a simple statement of fact and faith. And then there's Zechariah. His prayer is so human. It captures that quiet, lifelong ache of being childless, especially in his old age. You can feel the deep longing in his words. But even as he makes his plea for an heir, it's completely wrapped in submission. He asks, but he also acknowledges that at the end of the day, God is the best of inheritors. It's this beautiful mix of hope and trust. So you see the pattern here, right? It's so clear. Jonah, Job, Zechariah, they're all facing these overwhelming, seemingly impossible situations. They're feeling despair, they're in pain, they're full of longing. But what do they do in that darkest moment? Every single one of them turns to God, and God alone, reaffirming that core message of Tawhid. And what happens next? The surah tells us that in every single case, their call is answered. They are saved. Okay, so after all these powerful stories from human history, the surah completely shifts gears. It pivots from proofs in the lives of prophets to proofs that are written all over the universe. The argument becomes, you don't actually need to wait for a messenger to tell you these things. The signs of a single creator are everywhere. You just have to look. And this next part is just fascinating. The surah poses this really profound question. It asks, basically, haven't people ever stopped to think about the fact that the heavens and the earth were once all one single thing? It uses the word raq, meaning a joined entity. And then it says, we parted them, using the word fatak. It's presenting the very origin story of our universe as a sign, a massive clue for anyone who's willing to just stop and think about it. And the signs just keep piling up. Think about it. The fact that every living thing is made from water. The mountains, which it says were placed on the earth to keep it stable, almost like giant pegs. The simple, perfect rhythm of night and day, over and over again. And the sun and the moon, each swimming in its own precise orbit. Every single one of these things is presented as another piece of the puzzle, all pointing to one single intelligent creator behind it all. And all of this, the stark warnings, the stories of the prophets, the signs in the cosmos, it all leads us to our final theme. This is the part that ties everything we've talked about together. It's where the surah finally reveals the ultimate why. Why this message? What's the point of it all? So the chapter kind of comes full circle. It goes back to the idea of the end, describing the day of judgment with this incredible image of the heavens being folded up, just like you'd roll up a scroll of paper. The point is powerful and simple. The one who had the power to create everything from nothing the first time around can absolutely do it again for the final accounting. It's not a maybe. It's presented as an inevitable reality. But then, and this is the most important takeaway, after all this talk of judgment and accountability, the surah does something amazing. It completely reframes the whole purpose of the message. It's saying that all these warnings, they're not really threats designed to scare you. They're more like signposts on a road designed to guide you. It's all an act of compassion, a way to help us steer clear of a path that leads to ruin. And that leads us to the final, beautiful conclusion of the whole chapter. It's a verse addressed directly to the Prophet Muhammad, but it really summarizes the entire point of every prophetic mission. It says, "And we have not sent you except as a mercy to the worlds." So at the end of the day, the goal was never to condemn. It was to be a mercy for all of creation. So let's just leave it with this final thought. This chapter starts with this really stark, urgent warning about being asleep at the wheel, and it ends by defining the entire message as an act of pure mercy. It kind of leaves us with a question to reflect on in our own lives, doesn't it? How does your perspective change when you start to view guidance, rules, advice, maybe even criticism, not as something meant to restrict you, but as a genuine act of mercy, a gift designed for your own good?